All right, so the next one is called Social Security and Medicare, or FICA. Okay, so that's the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. And these are basically taxes that are used for Social Security and Medicare benefits. Now, Social Security provides payments to eligible retirees, people with health problems, and eligible dependents of deceased persons and disabled citizens. And Medicare provides health care coverage mostly to Americans 65 and older. And this is how the rates break down. So if you're just an employee of some company, this is how much you would pay. And so you'd pay 7.65% on the first $142,800 of the income, and then 1.45% of income in excess of that. Now, the employer, they pay the same, basically 7.65% on the first 142,800, and then 1.5% of the wages in excess of that. And if you're self-employed, guess what? You get to pay the whole thing. So you're going to pay 15.3% on the first 142,800 and 2.9% on excess of 142,800. So, no, taxpayers are not permitted to subtract adjustments, exemptions, or deductions when determining these taxes. So, whatever you make, that's what you're going to have to pay taxes on. So, for example, if you're not self-employed, so that means if you have a job with somebody, you're an employee, and you earn $210,000, what are your FICA taxes? All right, so 7.5% on the first 142,800. So we know we're going to have to convert that to a decimal, 0.0765 times 142,800, and then plus, and it was 1.5%. So that's going to be 0.0145 times. And now we're going to take 210,000 minus 142,800, and that will give us our value there. So doing that in place, we have, look at that. So we have 0.0765 times 142,800. And then we're going to add to that plus 145 times 210, 123, minus 142,800. And then that gives us $11,898.60. So that's how much we're going to have to pay in FICA taxes. So that again was $11,898.60. So that's how much you'll have to pay in the FICA taxes. Okay. All right, now let's move on and talk about your pay stub. So, in your pay stub, you'll see something called gross pay, and that's also known as your base pay. And it's basically your salary prior to any withheld taxes for the pay period the pay stub covers. So, maybe you get paid monthly, so that'll be your gross pay for the month, or if you get paid weekly, it'd be your gross pay for the week. And that's how much you would receive if nothing were deducted. Now, net pay is the actual amount of your check or deposit after taxes have been withheld. So that's what you actually see in the bank after they've taken everything out. Now, pay stubs usually contain most of these things here. It depends on your company you work for, but you have personal information about the employee, basically your name, your address, your social security number, and your marital status. Information about earnings. This includes your hourly wage, the number of hours worked in the current pay period, the number of hours worked year to date, which is usually the total number of hours worked since January 1st of the current year, or the first pay of the year may include the latter part of December, depending on your company. Or maybe if you started later in the year, maybe you started in June, then it would be from June. So it all depends on a lot of different factors there. And the amount earned during the current pay period and the amount earned year to date. Then also information about tax deductions, summarizing withholdings for the current pay period and withholdings year to date. And then finally, gross pay, total deductions, and net pay for the current period and the year to date total for each. And again, depending on what kind of place you work, you'll see different things in different ways. So if you're in salary, you won't see hourly wages or things like that. But if you're hourly wages, then you'll see those kind of things. So all depends on the place where you're working, what you get to see. All right, so let's see if you were a student and you decide to work part-time at a local nursery. The job pays $16 per hour and you work 15 hours per week. Your employer withholds 10% of your gross pay for federal taxes, 7.65% for FICA taxes, like we just looked at, and 4% for state taxes. What is your weekly gross pay? All right, so for weekly gross pay, basically what we're going to have to calculate is we're going to have to figure out how many hours we worked and how much we earned per hour. So doing that, we have, for one, we earned $16 per hour and we worked 15 hours. So if we multiply those two together, we should get, looks like $240. And that's going to be $240 per week. So that's your weekly gross pay. Now, two, how much is withheld for federal taxes? Well, they're saying 10% of your gross pay for federal taxes. So 0.1 times 240, well, that's going to give us $24 is going to be for federal taxes. FICA, so that's going to be 0.0765 times 240. And if we multiply that out, that's going to be $18.36 for FICA. State taxes is 4%, so that's going to be 0.04 times 240. So that's going to give us 960 for state taxes. And what is your weekly net pay? Well, that's going to be basically taking, so if we'd have that one, that's going to be the 240 minus the 24 minus 18.36 minus 9.60, because we have to take off all these withholdings from our gross pay. And that gives us that we're only going to take home $188.04. Okay. Now, last one, what percentage of your gross pay is withheld for taxes? Round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So this kind of goes back to an equation we had before. What's the difference in what we initially made and what we're taking home? So that's going to be 240 minus 188.04 divided by the initial, which is 240. Multiply that by 100%. And let's see what we get there. So that one's going to be, all right, so we'll have parenthesis, we're going to have 240 minus 188.04 divided by 240 times the 100%. And so that means 21.65% of our gross pay was taken out for taxes of some sort. So again, that was 21.65%, or they want it rounded to the nearest tenth of a percent. So that would be 21.7% was taken out of your gross pay for taxes. So for taxes, okay. All right. So that kind of explains hopefully a little bit about everything in this section, and hopefully that will help you.